Man, you guys are really layering on the big episodes, huh? I guess it makes sense to cover Generation 3's 2 pseudo-legendaries in succession. That's right, this week it's Salamence, one of Pokemon's greatest stories told through evolution. How inspiring is it that Bagon literally jumped off cliffs repeatedly until by sheer force of will, it learned to fly. I used to think that Salamence was sort of weird looking, what with its entirely flat wings and all. But maybe Salamence is supposed to look that way because it's Bagon's dream of what a dragon looks like. It's sad that Salamence apparently goes on a rampage if it's angry, and you'd think that after achieving its life's goal, it would finally be happy. Oh well, some people will never be satisfied. But that anger plays to Salamence's strength, fueling its destructive power in battle. So let's get to it. How good was Salamence actually? And in this video, we'll be covering these competitive formats. Those stats, man. Salamence is just an attacking machine. Wait, no, that was last week. Salamence is an attacking monster. 135 attack is incredible, and 110 special attack certainly isn't bad either. While 100 speed puts Salamence right into one of the most coveted speed tiers in the game. 80 defense is pretty average, but keep in mind that Salamence has Intimidate, one of the best abilities in the game, and one that means its physical longevity can be much greater than what the stats may say. Dragon and Flying type may have that 4 times weakness to ice, but resistances to fire, grass, water, bug fighting, and an immunity to ground all factor into Salamence being significantly harder to take down than you might think. But let's not pretend that Salamence is some tank or anything. No, this is definitely an attacker we're looking at. When I think of Dragon Dance, I think of Salamence. Well, actually, I think of Altaria because of Winona, but yeah. One boost lets Salamence outspeed the entire unboosted RSD metagame except for Ninjask, and that monstrous attack stat meant that Salamence was perfectly capable of cleaning up entire teams. Salamence's biggest weakness, though, was that while it had a huge move pool, it lacked strong stab moves, being forced to resort to HP Flying, Earthquake, and Rock Slide for damage. Many Salamence also ran Fire Blast or Rock Slide due to the tendency of opposing Skarmory and Fortress to switch in. Of course, if you wanted to make up for Salamence's handicapped power, you could always go Choice Band, which put dents in opponents' defenses from the start and allowed for broader coverage. Even Brick Break if you wanted to hit Snorlax or Tyranitar. The raw power of this set let Salamence rampage through many of its standard counters. More on that later. Of course, I made a point of saying Salamence wasn't a tank, but thanks to Intimidate and the deep fervent desire that got it to its final stage in the first place, it actually could play defense incredibly well. That's a fancy way of saying Salamence got Wish, of all things. And since Mence was going to be playing the physical side of defenses anyway, its ice-type weakness isn't something you would try to wall. With Intimidate, Wish, and Protect, Salamence could stay alive incredibly long while fishing for burns with Flamethrower or just throwing around Toxic. Common walls would switch in and be horribly surprised by a bad poison sent their way. Let's talk about those walls now. Salamence's lack of a strong stab made it especially vulnerable to getting screwed by strong bulky water types, especially since they frequently carried Ice Beam, Salamence's worst enemy. Milotic, Swampert, and Suicune were the biggest offenders, all easily withstanding earthquakes and hitting back for big damage or simply crippling it with Toxic. Claydol and Weezing made good use of their ground immunity, forcing Salamence to use one of its weaker moves like Hidden Power Flying, and Regice could potentially work if not shattered by Brick Break or Rock Slide. But Salamence did have ways around these walls. In addition to the Wish set, Mixed Mence was not an uncommon sight. The main use here was baiting in the omnipresent and omni-annoying Swampert, by far Salamence's most common switch-in, and then making use of Salamence's special attack to hit it with a Hidden Power Grass. With Mixed Mence's naturally amazing stats, it could still be a big player besides its purpose as a lure. It easily beats Blissey, Skarmory, Fortress, Snorlax, and Tyranitar with Brick Break or Fire Blast. So Salamence was an unpredictable beast who, if you gave it breathing room, would set up in your face and win, but could always ruin your day with Fire Blast or Hidden Power. Thus, the most reliable wins were sometimes other offensive Pokemon, like Zapdos or Aerodactyl. This came down to figuring out if Salamence was missing Rock Slide, Fire Blast, or Brick Break. Either those flying types, Skarmory, or its fellow pseudo-legendary Tyranitar could work, especially if Salamence was locked into a move. But it was the definition of a terrifying sweeper, and was easily one of Gen 3's defining overused Pokemon, right up there with Metagross. As Diamond and Pearl started, Salamence... Wait, first, can we address that it changed color completely? Where did the indigo go? Okay, Salamence was honestly completely outclassed as a physical attacker. Garchomp did everything it did better, while it was still an overuse, and even Dragonite had Outrage. Stealth Rocks sure didn't help either. As such, original Diamond and Pearl renditions of the Fearsome Dragon chose to focus on the scorching everything with fire aspect, using Salamence's incredible special attacking move pool. Spec Salamence was the most common set, featuring Draco Meteor, Hydro Pump, Fire Blast or Flamethrower, and Dragon Pulse. A strong special attacker in its own right, this set also lent to Salamence's classic Mixed Ments set, which was one of the strongest stall breakers in the game, thanks to its ability to hit hard on both sides. Brick Break was usually all that was needed to handle those Pokemon who could handle Fire Blast or Draco Meteor, and Roost let Salamence equal those Pokemon's recovery. Defensive Salamence was still an option, but Ments in general was significantly weaker than it had been in Gen 3, or at least less popular. Then Platinum came, and Salamence was bestowed with its greatest wish, other than flying I guess, Outrage. Oh yeah, and Garchomp got banned, who, let's be clear, was also an incredible Salamence remover in its own right, due to the 2 points of speed it had over it. With Outrage, Salamence suddenly became a huge menace, arguably one of the biggest in the game, along with its fellow Dragon-type Latias. Its Dragon Dance set was back in full force, revitalized by the addition of a powerful stab move and Life Orb to make it bigger than it ever had before. Remember when Suicune could handle +1 Ments? Yeah, not anymore. But Salamence could literally mix and match whatever moves and stat spreads it wanted. Seriously, choose 4 out of Draco Meteor, Outrage, Fire Blast, Brick Break, Earthquake, Roost, and Dragon Dance, slap an appropriate item and stat spread on, and Salamence would make it work. Choice Band, Choice Scarf, Mixed Dragon Dance, physically bulky, special bulky, anything could work really. The additional attacking power of Outrage combined with Draco Meteor, both of which were devastatingly powerful without any investment, meant Salamence was always a threat on both sides of the attacking spectrum. Mixed Ments was even more terrifying with both Draco Meteor and Outrage, which also meant it could run the more reliable Earthquake over Brick Break, since Outrage was just so stupidly powerful that it didn't need the super effective hits on Blissey anymore. And if you really needed it, you could even throw on Stone Edge or Aqua Tail. And when you ask people who played Gen 4 competitively about the meta, they'll guaranteed respond with a few eras. The beginning was the reign of Garchomp, and the end was all Heatran, but the middle? That was Scissor's era. I know we're talking about Salamence, but that's precisely why Scizor was so prevalent. Salamence and Latias were such hugely over-centralizing Pokemon that every Pokemon needed to carry a Scizor. Widely considered to be one of the only solutions to both Pokemon because of its typing and ability to hit them hard with Bullet Punch, beating even the Choice sets. Choice Scarf Jirachi was similar, able to KO with Ice Punch after Stealth Rocks, but it could lose to Dragon Dance. Bronzong would win unless there were 2 Fire Blasts. Metagross and Heatran beat Mixed Ments, but Dragon Dance would end them. Get the idea? Salamence could beat everything. It always had hard counters like Hippowdon and Swampert for Dragon Dance or Vaporeon for Mixed Ments, but it was so unpredictable that you were guaranteed most times to lose a Pokemon in attempting to beat it. Compounding this problem is that such a simple change as carrying Dragon Dance or not could completely change the counters, and it was incredibly hard to tell, given any set could run Life Orb or Draco Meteor or whatever it wanted. Good luck relying on damage calcs to tell the set when it's killing you with any move. Ice Shard users like Donphan, Mamoswine, and Weavile could always scare away Salamence, but switching in was another problem altogether. And of course, Latias could beat Ments with its own meteors. So it should come as no surprise that eventually Salamence was banned. It enjoyed a brief 3 months where Latias was banned, and it ran almost completely unchecked, but soon after, Ments was relegated to Ubers, where it actually was just a poor man's Rayquaza. But before that, boy was it a titan. Generation 5 saw Salamence drop back to overuse, something I'm sure it was happy about, since no one wants to be just playing second fiddle to Rayquaza. Back in overuse, Salamence expanded its repertoire even more with a second incredible ability. You thought lowering attack was good? How about raising attack after every single KO? That's right, Salamence got Moxie, which it didn't really need honestly, but alright, whatever, Game Freak. Well, maybe it did a little bit. With almost every dragon type in existence back in overuse, plus the new threat of Hydreigon, Salamence faced stiff competition. Hydreigon and Latios were the premier Draco Meteor users, while Garchomp handled offense quite well. It was Moxie that really set Salamence apart, now bringing its Choice Scarf set to the fore. Salamence was an incredible revenge killer that also doubled as a sweeper, powering through the endgame with Outrage and increasing attack boosts. Dragon Claw lets Salamence be somewhat relevant in every game if needed, and Earthquake, Fire Blast, and Aqua Tail rounded out the set. Let's not forget that Rain was everywhere. With Black and White 2, Salamence was able to run Moxie, Dragon Dance, and Outrage all on one set, which was frankly disgusting. This set could run Intimidate or Moxie. Intimidate made for easier switch-ins and a more guaranteed setup, but the power of Moxie, geez. That was hard to pass up. Like Choice Scarf, this set was pretty simple. Set up and then kill stuff, but with more variable power this time. And of course, the classic Mixed Ments makes a return. Draco Meteor and Outrage was just too powerful a combination to pass up, eating physical walls like Hippowdon and Slowbro for breakfast. A full special attacking set was still possible because of Salamence's bulk and the sheer surprise factor. You were never gonna see a physical Hydreigon or Latios, but Salamence could go either way. As always, Salamence had no real true counters. Stealth Rocks were maybe the most reliable thing, along with Porygon 2, but even that would lose to mixed Moxie sets. You get it, Salamence has no true counter. Hippowdon, Slowbro, Donphan, Quagstar, and Cresselia were all just some of the Pokemon that would lose to one set and beat the other. Special mention has to go to Landorus T, who is amazing in general, and also beat physical sets with its own Intimidate, and to Skarmory and Bronzong, who can now be effective counters to almost all sets in the rain. Checks though, there were plenty of those. Mamoswine was perhaps the best, and Scizor returned with a vengeance to beat choice sets. Terrakion, Latios, Keldeo, and Garchomp all beat it as well, as did choice attackers, but Salamence continued on its unending rampage through overuse. While Salamence wasn't allowed in VGC 2011, it had a few appearances in VGC 12 and 13, but it wasn't close to its singles power. Enemy Intimidators meant strong physical attackers were frequently neutered, and while Salamence packed its own Intimidate, the VGC 2012 metagame revolved around the dragons that did something better than Salamence, Latios and Hydreigon. What's more, Outrage is horribly unreliable, meaning Salamence would have to go back to Gen 3 levels of physical power. That said, Salamence still made some pretty big appearances. At Worlds 2012, 4th placer Joel Pukolsky and 8th placer Junpei Yamamoto both ran it, so not too shabby. Joel Salamence served the dual role of Draco Meteor, Spammer, and Intimidator. Joel chose this specifically to partner with Excadrill, who needed defense from fighting and ground types to pull off its sweep, but his Salamence could sweep as well, with its hard-hitting Fire Blast. Junpei Salamence, on the other hand, was made specifically to counter Latios, with a Scarf attached to outspeed them and hit hard. Both teams did well, only falling to eventual winner, who else? Ray Rizzo, in bracket. But Salamence was still a niche pick, used for both Intimidate and Dragon typing, but not being the best at it either. Come VGC 2013, Landorus Therian had taken over the Intimidator spot on pretty much every team, and Salamence fell out of favor. The incredible power of so many Mega Pokemon pushed Salamence out of favor for much of XY, as did the advent of Fairy types, who ate up its outrage like nothing and said, "Calm down, son, why are you so angry?" But Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire gave Salamence a Mega evolution of its own, and oh boy, is it a doozy. Mega Salamence was actually immediately quick banned from Overaz Overuse. That's how disgustingly strong it was. While Salamence has enjoyed a large move pool for a long time, it never had a strong flying type stab. Enter Aerial Light. Suddenly, Double Edge is an effectively base 234 attack coming off of a 145 attack. And if you didn't want the recoil, you could always go with Return, which was only a bit weaker. Sure, Fairy types could stop Outrage, but how about those flying type moves? That in itself is scary. But let's not forget that Mega Salamence also had 130 defense, 120 speed, access to Dragon Dance, and Intimidate before evolution to set up easier. Counters were reliable to get mutilated. It was really a no-brainer to throw this thing into Ubers, where it's a niche pick due to a weakness to Stealth Rocks in a meta where most Pokemon don't have time to remove hazards. When Salamence is used, it almost exclusively runs Dragon Dance, which, combined with Roost, makes for one hell of a bulky sweeper. That bulk was part of the reason it got banned in the first place. And it used it in Ubers too, to tank Ho-Oh most frequently. Uber Salamence frequently ran Double Edge, alongside Earthquake, and sometimes Facade. And because Banded Ho-Oh is so common, Salamence can eat a burn and suddenly spam Facade for a no recoil huge power move, even roosting off the damage. But Mega Salamence is hard to use in Ubers. Aside from that Stealth Rock's weakness, it faces multiple problems in the form of Lugia, Arceus Rock, Dialga, Zekrom, and many other Pokemon that can take its punches and fire back. And there were always the ice moves too. But yeah, this thing is gross. And in doubles, well, actually, before we talk about Mega Salamence and doubles, we need to take a trip back to before Oraz and discuss regular Salamence. VGC 2014 is actually the best year for Salamence ever, due in large part to the limitation to the Kalos decks, which still included many Pokemon Salamence does well against, but tossed out Landorus T. Salamence became by far the best Intimidate user in the game, an asset that became all the more valuable with Mega Kangaskhan tearing up the game. Salamence was featured on a large amount of successful teams throughout the season, including Marcus Statter's winning team at Germany Nationals, Ray Rizzo's winning team in Massachusetts, Michael Lanzano's team from Georgia, and Ben Irons in Kansas. All three of the top teams at Massachusetts had a Mence. By the time Worlds rolled around, Mence was still good. but the meta had shifted notably. Kangaskhan had fallen out of favor, and Mega Mawile was the hot new thing, along with Garchomp and Tyranitar. Mega Mawile in fact hard countered Salamence. Due to Hyper Cutter, it wouldn't suffer from Intimidate, leaving it free to transform and wreak havoc. However, the one high placing Salamence user at Worlds was Jody Azarelli, who took his Double Dragon team, shoutouts to Junpei Yamamoto, all the way to Grands, where Salamence was promptly foiled by a certain legendary Electric Rodent. And while Salamence had his Mega Evolution as soon as VGC 2015, Landorus was back as well. Mega Salamence was okay for most of VGC 2015, if still outclassed as a pure intimidator. Alberto Lara even won both SoCal and Utah regionals with it, and it was in 3 top 8 teams at US Nationals. Mega Salamence proved a terrifying double attacker, where Salamence was finally able to utilize its physical attack as well as its special attack. Aerial Light, Hyper Voice, and Double Edge let Salamence choose whether it wanted disgusting spread damage or disgusting single target damage, and it could still fall back on Draco Meteor if necessary. But when Worlds came along again, Chalk had come to town, and Landorus was the intimidator of choice on every top 8 team. Salamence was still around. In fact, 9th placer Gennaro Vallejo finished just outside top cut using one, but the metagame had been solved in large part, and it didn't include Ments. Luckily for Salamence, change was in the air. In a metagame of Primals, Salamence could actually keep its own fairly well, again in fair part due to Intimidate, but also because it could outrun Mega Rayquaza, thus being an amazing check for one of the most fearsome Pokemon in the game. So it was VGC 2016 where Salamence returned to prominence and made its way back into top 8. 2016 revolved largely around what combinations of Primals you were using. 5th and 6th placers Aaron Traylor and Justin Karras were able to run without Mega Rayquaza because Mega Salamence served as a counter, freeing up their team for other Pokemon such as Amoonguss, Smeargle, and Xerneas. But it was Wolf Glick and Marcus Satter's Raichu and Hitmontop team that made the biggest splash that Worlds. And that's it. So how good was Salamence actually? Surprising to no one, it was amazing. Salamence has been overused and even Ubers since its release, and even when it did drop to underuse, it still has a Mega Evolution that stays in Ubers to this day. It's one of the only Pokemon to make a mixed set work at a very top level, and its unpredictability, bolstered by incredible stats, ability, typing, and move pool, have guaranteed it will always be used. It's hard to think of a Pokemon more versatile, and imagine not too long ago it was just a Bagon, wishing it could fly. Thanks for watching everyone, and as always if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content, and of course as I always say, comment on what Pokemon you want to see next. Also thank you so much to the patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms, yada yada yada. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.